Good morning, parents and our De La Salle Holy Cross College community. So we would like to start our presentation. I'm going to start sharing my screen. There we go. So today we will be presenting a webinar that surrounds connectedness in a disconnected society. This will be presented by myself, Keziah Coleman, and Marlise, Greyling, the other psychologist at the junior school. So when we think about connectedness within a disconnected society at the moment, we first need to look at what is a community. A community is often classified as a specific system of action which arises when a human population settled in a given territory establishes structural arrangements to organize itself in order to live and survive as a group. Communities are often known as a group of individuals that have settled within a demographic area. So it develops an interactive relationship among its components. These components are often people, and it could be your environment as well. So these define shared ways of thinking, feeling, and acting, which are internalized by the members of the population. So therefore, community is actually a very complex system of interactions between our social, cultural, political, psychological, and ecological elements. So we will then explain this according to a multi-ecological perspective. So when we look at a multi-level ecological perspective, we always have the individual in the middle. Then the individual is surrounded by the microsystem. So the microsystem is often the system which the individual is immediate contact with. These are a family system, your friendship circles, and these microsystems are then surrounded by a macrosystem. So we are all surrounded by the macrosystem, which involves the community as a whole. It involves the school. It often involves church organizations, systems that the individual comes into direct contact with. Sometimes in our macro system, we have factors that we can't control. So things like COVID-19 and the coronavirus, these are things that happened within our macro system. It affects the individual, but we do not have direct control over that. And an interesting thing about the multi-level ecological perspective is we can often see it as having a ripple effect. So whatever happens within the individual, the microsystem and the macrosystem, there is a reciprocal relationship where it all interacts with one another. So what happens in the one happens in the other. And this is why we as a whole population, as the whole world, are affected by COVID-19. So when we look at the history of a changing society, firstly, we started off with what we call the medical model. And the medical model is, if we look at it in the field of psychology, it mainly focuses on pathology and assessment. So in history, we look at that where it was mainly focused on identifying disorders and treating a broken leg like a broken leg with medication, not what is the result thereof, what could be the consequences thereof. So human beings were seen to be very passive, not actively participating in their own forms of reality making. So psychological difficulties were only treated medically and no other factors were considered. If we look at recent research now, we know that our environment often has an effect on our mental well-being, on how we evolved as a population, as a community, and as an individual. So there are multiple influences that we often need to take into account before we can actually think of the human being itself. So no focus has been on social and emotional pain. Everything was pathologized. There were no such thing as social emotional pain. So being similar and uniformity, that is what a community strived for. Everything had to be the same. No form of uniqueness were able to be celebrated. So luckily, we have evolved into what we call a constructivist society, where constructivism focuses on the idea that knowledge is not passively received, but actively and continuously constructed and reconstructed by the individual. So this means that we construct our own form of reality. We become active creators of our own knowledge. So constructivism is thus concerned with how individuals construct their own meaning and understanding of the world through their life experiences. Life experience is very important. It often shapes us as individuals. It creates our own reality. So the construction of knowledge often involves social mediation within a cultural context, and it also fosters the authentic and real world environment. So when we look at that, connection becomes very important. From a constructivist point of view, connection is a way of life. The meaning that people attach to reality is often informed by the context of their community, the connection that we have with our community members, our organizations. That constructs our way of how we portray ourselves and how we actually see ourselves within a community.
Good afternoon. I'm going to speak on connection a little bit further. And yes, the importance of connection is the energy that exists between people when they feel seen and heard and valued. They receive without judgment, and they can derive substance and strength in a relationship like that. For me and for all of us, I think as health workers, to connect is to thrive. As soon as we make a connection with another individual, we start to feel a sense of belonging, and we can see that, especially now in COVID-19, with our children coming back to school, that connection that was so dearly missed. All human development, when we look at human development, the science of the brain and why our brain is actually wired to connect, it's not just a need, it's so much more than that. If we go with a wonderful man called Albert Einstein, he said, without the sense of fellowship of men, of like mind, life would have seemed empty to me. So to truly understand the human being, it's also important to be clear about who we are. And we thrive for connection because we are social creatures. And in understanding our social nature, we can improve our lives. And improving our lives, we can also improve our society. I'm quoting Matthew Lieberman, who is a neuroscientist. And according to Matthew Lieberman, neuroscience discovered that our brains actually experience threats to our social connections in the same way that we experience physical pain. The neuro link between the social and the physical pain also ensures that staying socially connected will be a lifelong need, like food and warmth. So we need to be connected. Let's just look at the neuroscience and why our brains actually are wired to connect. Given the fact that our brains treat social and physical pain as the same, for them it's the same things, the same areas in the brain light up, whether it's physical or social pain, but we as society don't do the same. We don't expect someone with a broken leg just to get over it. But when someone comes with a social loss, the common response often is just get over it. And sometimes it is the same pain that resides. We intuitively believe that socially and physical pain are radically different, yet it's not the same for our brains, because our brains treat them and suggest that they are the same and more similar than we can imagine. There is no such thing as a nonconformist, meaning that our brain primarily is responsible for allowing other people's belief to influence our own, meaning that everything we experience, we are connected to other people and it's rubbed off on us. I remember our English teacher told us once that there is no such thing as a true original novel. It's always influenced by previous books. So our brains are wired for reaching out and interacting with each other. These are design features, and they're actually not flaws. These social adaptations are central to making us the most successful species on Earth. Just as there are multiple social networks like Facebook and Twitter, there are also multiple social networks in our brain, sets of brain regions that work together that promote our social well-being. Let's further look on the neurobiology and connection. Neuroscience actually is confirming that our nervous system wants us to connect with other human beings. A good example of this is mirror neurons, which are located throughout the brain and actually helps us to read other people's feelings and actions. They may be the neurological underpinnings of empathy. When two people are in conversation, they are stimulating each other's mirror neurosystem. Not only will this lead to movement in similar muscles of the face, like facial expression, like body language. If I fold my arms, you fold your arms because you identify with me, but it's also allow each of us to feel the other's feelings. This is an automatic and a moment-to-moment resonance that connects human being to human being. What happens actually during this connection with the brain? What actually happens is that there's happy hormones. And the happy hormones are our dopamine, our serotonin, and our oxytocin levels. The dopamine is the human bonding. It's also bringing the brain's reward system into our understanding of human attachment. It's social interaction, and that would increase the dopamine. So the more we are socializing, the more happy hormones we receive. The serotonin, that is a good natural mood stabilizer. And also, so oxytocin is also called the love hormone, and that creates the same happiness in our bodies. And that is why it's so good to fall in love. What is social connection? Social connection is powerful. It's a human core need. It subjects us to experiences of feelings close to a sense of belonging with others. We feel included. A person is actively engaged with another person, and that in the end results to well-being. So it is also seen that it lower the rates of anxiety and depression. It helps with the self-esteem. It teaches us empathy. We get better emotional regulation skills. And social connection also creates positive feedback, social and emotional and physical well-being. Interconnectedness of feeling. So empathy is a very, very important one, because empathy is seen as a cognitive ability to put yourself in someone else's shoes, to imagine what they will be experiencing. And that is the shallow empathy, just to put yourself in the other person's shoes. Then we get the deep empathy, when our consciousness seems to expand outwards and actually emerge into other people's. And then we enter into their mind and their space, and we actually share their feeling. And that is shared social pain. And in communities, if we interact like this, that is actually the support and the strength of the connectedness and the communities. And understanding the connection, we now go over to disconnection, which actually enforces the opposite.
Yes. So this is basically what we are experiencing right now, is disconnection. Connection is an amazing thing to have. And I think we've always had that sense of connection. But due to coronavirus, due to this pandemic, we have gone into a state of being isolated or feeling detached. So a very powerful word that goes with disconnection is termination. It almost seems final. So the social pain or the social disconnection that is actually accompanying individuals at this moment creates a large state of being isolated, feeling detached. So emerging evidence has suggested that experiences of social pain, the painful feelings associated with social disconnection, rely on some of the same neurobiological substrates that underlie experiences of physical pain. So Matthew Lieberman has done a very interesting experiment where he had 3 individuals throwing a ball to each other. And what happened was one individual stopped throwing the ball to another one. So only 2 people were participating. So one person felt completely isolated. And these feelings of rejection and isolation have been directly connected to the same feeling of physical pain. So people who experience social pain can almost be said to be in physical pain as well. So we have always known that human life means adjustment to change. Change is inevitable for human beings, whether it is planned or whether it is unplanned, like the pandemic is unplanned. Change overall can be challenging for human beings, and we are experiencing that challenge at the moment. There's a lot of pressure where humans find themselves amid the chaos in a state of social disconnection. So this next picture explains disconnection almost in one screen, where we have to wear masks, we have to socially distance from each other, 2 loved ones still being able to have a conversation, but they are 1.5 meters apart. We have an antivirus entrance at the spa where we have to sanitize constantly. The middle picture at the bottom where the elderly lady looks outside of the window. Maybe she is not able to directly contact her loved ones, but she might be able to see them in the distance. Even being taken, your temperature being taken, it is quite an invasive and intrusive action. Someone pointing something at your forehead, very into your own space. And then the top picture at the right, where lots of individuals have been hospitalized by COVID-19, health workers needing to wear protective equipment and clothing, very impersonal, not being able to physically touch and care for an individual because they need to actually protect themselves as well. But there is that form of disconnection there. Restaurants being empty, not even being able to socialize the same way. Social distancing, no more birthday parties, no more play dates, no more movies or traveling. So not seeing our loved ones, the elderly, I think, who have been in old age homes or retirement homes, the fragile, those have been affected quite a lot by this pandemic. They have had a large state of isolation where they actually look forward to our visits, where our little ones look forward to going to visit their grandparents. Now they're not able to see their grandparents because of exposure or because of their fragile state. So socially, we have actually become morphed. So no more touch, no more handshakes, no more hugs, and no more kisses. Some of us are very physical beings where we need to have that touch in order to have that connection. So we needed to adapt as humans in order to reach out and to have a new sense of connection. So what has happened with this disconnection and this pandemic is that it has created a lot of loneliness and isolation. What has gone hand in hand with that are some of the dangers of low social connection. So it has been said that it is worse for your health than even smoking, high blood pressure, or obesity. They have found higher states of inflammation at the cellular level, higher susceptibility to anxiety and depression because of that isolation, because of that loneliness. Just like Marlise explained, within the brain, then everything, all of our love hormones and our happy hormones have become completely derailed. So it goes into a state of anxiety and depression, slower recovery rate from disease, increased antisocial behavior and violence because there's a buildup of frustration. We cannot connect. And also, sadly, there has been a higher prevalence of suicide because of this loneliness and isolation. So when we experience a state of loss just during disconnection, it has almost been said that we go through the exact same phases of loss, which is denial, anger, depression, and acceptance. I think almost in a year of being in lockdown, we are starting to slowly go towards the state of acceptance. But we had to move through a lot of levels of denial, being angry of why is this happening, and then going into a state of feeling depressed, where you feel sad and you feel lonely and you cannot reach out. So I think we are slowly moving towards that stage of acceptance. So when we look at everything now at the end, we need to think about how do we promote connectedness among our youth, especially within this disconnected society. If we look at our schools, we can reinforce positive behavior through praise and establishing rules, routines, and expectations. When there is structure and routine, children often thrive because of the predictability in the elements. Classroom management techniques also promote a higher level of school connectedness. Being able to come back to school, I think, was an amazing thing for our kids, because this is where they feel connected. They are able to see their friends, they are able to see their teachers, they are able to connect with people in a safe environment. Also, we can do student-led clubs at school. Finally, we are able to do a little bit of fun fitness and sports at school. Our swimming have started. So they are starting to get back to a normal state of connection, but within a safe environment. We also can facilitate positive youth development activities by having mentor programs, volunteering, reaching out into our communities and having community-based programs. We were also blessed enough to have our Wellness Wednesdays, where we are able to reach out to our community as psychologists and counselors, where we can become part of our community and keep in touch with our community. Being able to do online counseling during the lockdown period enables us to form a sense of connection and to support our community as a whole. Then within families and caregivers, I think it's very important to have open and honest communication with the kids. Introducing and including our values are also very important. We need to supervise and facilitate healthy decision making, especially when our brains feel a little bit disconnected. We need to enable our kids to make healthy decisions. Quality time is a very important aspect. Even just spending 30 minutes with your child a day, or a few minutes, just by asking them, how was their day, what happened at school, that quality time, it facilitates connection. Positive parenting practices are also very important. Becoming engaged in the school and helping with homework or projects. That's always fun for the kids when they know that their parents are engaging with them, they are helping them with their projects. Volunteering at school, becoming part of the school community, also very important. But I think the most important thing about connection is communication. Communication is key. Communicate with the counselors, communicate with the psychologists, the teachers. Just by expressing what you are feeling, what you are going through, almost facilitates that connection immediately again. So communication is key. So now we might be wondering, how can I increase my social connection if I am an introvert? Many people think being an introvert is someone who sits by themselves, who often isolates. That might not be the case. An introvert is just someone who gains energy from self-reflection. So that's not a problem at all. All the benefits mentioned above have nothing to do with how many friends you have. The benefits come from your internal and subjective sense of connection. If you have that feeling that you are connected with someone, then it is there. The connection is there. So an internal sense of connection can be nurtured and it can also be built. So you can give, share, support, and do acts of service and kindness for others in order to feel connected. You can also, very importantly, take care of yourself as well and ask for help. there's always someone who is able to reach out and to help, and just to know that you're not alone, and to know that someone is there and that you have that ability to feel connected. So that was our presentation on connection within our disconnected society. Thank you to everyone that has been a part of this webinar, and we look forward to the next one. And also remember that all of our counselors and psychologists are available. All our details are on the school app. So if you need anything, please feel free to reach out. Thank you.